Hello, hello. What's up? Let's go into some more Last Epoch here. I kind of have it set up a little different here. I have the chat in the middle of the screen. I'm gonna I don't think it's possible to have you guys up on chat. I guess I could do it. It's not restream. See here.
Check 1, 2, 3.
So we're gonna play the Time and Talk interview with one of the 11th hour games devs, just to see their talk on like 1.0. And if you don't know what Tavern Talk is, it's a podcast with DM and Gazzy. And Gazzy is like, I think he's mostly known for PoE. He does like mostly minion builds and stuff. And like DM is it's a newcomer to I guess both the games actually, both PoE and Last Epoch. Hold up here. Should be here, right? Yeah. Then this. Nope, that's not it. This. There you go.
Thanks, sir. And Mike, you want to do the same?
1 2 1 2. Hello, this is me talking.
Sounds good on my end. Can everyone hear us loud and clear? We can hear the mic of Mike. Everybody? All right. Yep, all good. Sounds like we got the all good for everybody. So welcome to the next Tavern Talk with your boy DM Ghazi. And one more time, Mike from EHG is the special guest today to talk to us about Last Epoch right off the heels of the patch 1.0
I'm putting some background music, but it's gonna be very low anyways.
just dropped, so we did not get a
So
lot of time
something.
to look at it before the podcast. It pretty much just immediately
Just
dropped.
something to listen to.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, ready to get all the questions, the feedback.
Okay, everything's all good.
Let's have it. Ready to go.
Sounds good. You
Okay, everything's all good.
have what, 2 days, I believe, was today's
I'm not seeing the feed, so
game officially 1.0 launches.
we're just gonna look
2
at
days.
it like
What's
this.
like around the office right now?
Buzzing. Everyone's kind of. This is the biggest launch any of us have ever been a part of. I think. I maybe someone has some big game under their belt I don't know about, but like this is a big one for all of us so far, and like everyone's just excited to be here, and like other generic sports interview question answers.
I can imagine how crazy it must be to go from like just a bunch of gamers making a Reddit post to just over 5 years later, basically be making a game.
It's freaking awesome seeing these guys
in the current genre.
like so enthusiastic
Seen other game making changes based of the announcement
about a game they're making. Sometimes it's not like that. Actually, a lot of times it's not like that.
And it's just crazy to see this blow up to the point where it's at right now compared to how you guys started just over 5 years ago. Like, it must be surreal.
Yeah, it's like all of us. You set out to do something like this, and everyone's like, "Wouldn't it be cool if it blew up and we had this amazing things and all the sort of stuff that happened?" And like, I talk to my friends and family about it. I'm like, "One day this is gonna be big, guys. I swear it's gonna be awesome." And like the fact that it's happening.
Self down a little bit.
Like
Little bit.
Still know if it's quite real, but yeah, it feels amazing. So we're doing everything we can to make everything stick and feel great. And yeah, it's been a wild ride so far. It's just gonna get crazier.
So in the 1.0 release, it mentioned that you guys only have 90 employees. Is the entire company? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I don't have the like exact manifest, but that sounds right to me, and I feel like that's Judd just said that in a video, I think, right?
Yeah, he just did from the
Yeah,
video they
yeah.
just released. And the reason I ask is because it said that a lot of you guys are new into the gaming industry, and that it kind of started with just like a raw passion project of trying to make the game that you guys basically wanted, and just went from
Yeah.
there, and it's slowly been evolving, evolving, and evolving. Have you been there since the beginning, or when did you join the project?
I joined a few months in, so like I still have the Reddit post that I replied to, and it's one of those original ones, but it was a few months, I don't know, like 4 or 5 months after the first post went out, something like that. Like I was there for the forming of the company, but not like absolute day one when the project was first announced or first like conceived.
When the amount of difference that has happened from in the 1.0 launch video you guys just put out, it shows the graphical updates that have happened from the beginning when you guys were just starting to all the way now to what's about to be released. And I was hoping maybe you could walk us through some of the graphical updates that are coming to 1.0, because it looks fairly significant when you watch it. At least I've only been playing it, the last month or so. So after looking at what we have now, as opposed to what's coming, that looks fairly different. But if you look at it as to what it was in the start, I mean, it's night and day.
Yeah, yeah. The I think a lot of that has to do with just our skills as developers and people making games has grown with the project, and like we've brought new people on that have brought in new skill sets and new talents, and it's just shown our growth as a development company overall for
That's so
last
important, though.
6 years now.
You need.
And the recent
You could
changes
stick with like a
are
small,
really big in the sense that they
like tight knit company,
sort of
but
like that last piece of the
at
puzzle.
some point,
And
it's gonna take.
I think it really helps.
If you want to release a game at a reasonable time frame,
in 1.0 is lighting,
which is
there's
what is that,
there's new
5,
tools,
6
there's new things
years?
like
That's honestly reasonable for a first time
showing up, and
go.
lots of new cool things showing up. But I think that the lighting changes that were
But sometimes you hear stories of like these one developers that
how is this? The things we've done
that's just like been developing games for like 8,
this is
10
really
years
shine as well. So it's not
plus.
it's sort of like the last piece of the puzzle for the
You think about like
updates we've been really focusing
Stardew Valley, how like I think the developer was developing that game by himself for like 8 years, 8, 9 years before he hired like a programmer or a artist, something like that. And he got that released, and also, if you guys remember, is that Owl Boy? I think that's what it's called. But that was the same story. One developer that's been making this game for like 10 years.
2 weeks, so I would play it.
Yes,
I had
that is
no
a true
idea
story.
about this. That is a true story. I had to verify it.
Yes, that's a true story. That was during our Kickstarter, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we launched Kickstarter. There was just 2 classes. There was the I think we called it Sorcerer at the time, and I think it was Beastmaster at the time. It may have been Primalist. And those are the only 2 playable classes at the start of the Kickstarter. And then a week left in Kickstarter, we pushed out the Necromancer as like a playable thing, specifically because you were saying that. We're like, we can do this, right? We got time, right? It's no big deal.
That is so cool. Because why I bring it up is mostly because I wanted it verified. I had to make sure this is actually true. But the graphics and everything, the way the game felt and looked, moving, and the animations and everything, it was such a crazy difference. Because what I've done since those 5.5 years ago is I've been around and playing last Epoch every major patch ever since. And it's just been insane how you guys have progressed and how much of an improvement everything has been.
You can sell everything.
There's
no point in having
in
this.
between, but every major one has been such an insane difference from the previous one. And then every time we got closer to where we are now, I felt like, no, they can't make this much better. Like the crafting system. And what do you know? You had a complete rework on the crafting system, made it even better. And now 0.9, I was like, this game is so good. I'm so excited. And then 1.0 comes out, and I see the
Maybe turn this
differences with the
way down.
changes, like you said. It just elevated that even further.
Right.
So I'm very excited to see what you guys are going to do with every patch moving forward from here. But the patch notes, like DM said earlier, it's a lot. so much.
It's a lot
I was
to
like,
read.
you know what, DM, let's go through this before the show. We open it up like we don't have time.
No
Missed the
time.
shot.
No time. But one of the things I did notice, at least from the video, that struck out as much to me as like the rain and everything, was the UI changes. They're a little bit more subtle, but the changes, for instance, like when you're looking at the weapons, are significant. I mean, the way you guys kind of did it, where it kind of juts out, like the bow was one example I had, it where it kind of sticks out a little bit of it to make it pop a little bit. So how much thought process went into figuring out what is going to be our final text form, exactly how are we going to do the UI of these?
I didn't notice that when I
It did seem
watched
like
the
you guys put a lot
video.
of thought into that.
Yeah, so this is
I'll keep an eye on it on Wednesday.
He put a ton of personal effort into making these, like, the UI really pop, and our lead UI designer, the two of them, like, just tons of effort into these things and getting those item tooltips to feel right. Our item tooltips have gone through so many iterations, and we spent a surprising amount of time like debating how they're going to look, what information's going to be there, all these things. A lot of the tiny little details are really important, and I think that
Oh my god, almost stopped.
these are the best tools we've ever had, and I don't know the full breadth of all of the stuff that went into that, and I sort of end up helping with some technical stuff with the item tooltips a fair bit, but I'm not really a UI designer myself, so I don't really help with the design process that much. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. We can make that work. But the text, the font itself, that's another huge thing. We actually went through a very big font development phase where we made our own font for the game, and so that's been a huge update. I think that really helps with the readability. We've been rolling that font out everywhere we can. It's on the website. You know, it's all into the game now. Yeah.
Wait, all?
A lot went to that.
You made your own
I'm
font.
very curious about that. Yeah, I mean, font, like, people don't, like, we as gamers, not in the actual development part of the industry, don't really think about it too much, but everyone recognizes Diablo 2 font. Like, everyone knows that. And it has such a big impact. So, like, how did you guys finally decide on which one to go with, considering how massive that actually is?
Well,
Like,
yeah, that
what
was
the
why
thought
we ended up
process?
developing our own font, was because we didn't want, because none of the fonts we had that we had available, we either, like, we were going to pay a ton of money to license this properly, or like it's just not quite right in this little bit. Oh, it's just not quite right here, and we want something that's distinctive, and people can say, like, oh, when they see that font, they can recognize it as a last Epoch font. And so there's like little things in like the way that the O works is unique, with like
That's
the line through the center of it, kind of like the right here. And so like there's
Oh,
little
like
things
the
that we do in the font
like
to
the
try to make
logo.
it stand out and be unique, and
Is it on
it's
here?
still, like, really easily legible and really quick to parse, especially when you're looking at an item tooltip. So yeah, it's a combination of like making it distinct, making it just look good, and making it be quick.
75.
Was that a more recent decision, or was that something you guys planned all along, but you're like, we're going to do this on release?
I think that we initially planned to not do this, and then probably I want to say like 2 years ago, we started the process of making a new font. It takes quite a while to do, and there's so many different like slight variations of it. There's like the base font, and there's like a semi-bold version, and then like a full bold version, and then like a title full bold version and a title semi-bold version. There's just like so many like little different variations on them, and it's just like the ratios on how thick each font each glyph is, and
This one.
like whether or not like the center has like a dot in it. The O is a big thing. There's like a dot in the center. There's a line on some of them, and it's like these little variations. So there's a lot that goes into that. It wasn't initially planned to be. Like from our Kickstarter, I don't think we ever thought like we're gonna make a font for this.
Yeah, that's
Judd's a big font nerd.
That's
and
interesting.
As soon as we like had the opportunity, he was like, I know exactly what it is, and I'm gonna get to make this font like right away.
Yeah, and then the O with the circle. Yeah, I see it now.
To the Kickstarter, I want to ask one more question about the history of Last Epoch, and then we'll go into.
Like obviously we don't think of it. We're just playing the game.
Etc. But the Kickstarter part is interesting for me because
but
we're covering the game. I'm not like Gazi, where I'm literally the first one ever over here. So what's interesting is I
don't know. It was cool.
As a Kickstarter. So when you started the Kickstarter, what was your original goal, and was it overwhelming support at that point where you blew way past it and you're like, we really got something going now? Because I mean, this game is the top seller on Steam, and it's came all the way from Kickstarter. So that journey is interesting to me. How did the Kickstarter start?
I mean, so before the Kickstarter happened, 100% of us were just like evenings and weekends, spare time, whoever can do whatever you can do, that's what you're doing. Like we all had day jobs, and the Kickstarter was really the goal of the
Oh,
Kickstarter was
those are pretty good,
let's
actually.
become a real company. Let's like pay ourselves money. Let's quit our day jobs. You know, like let's do this full time. We can make a game. Let's do this. And like most Kickstarter campaigns,
Yeah.
For unfinished products, like board games don't really fall into this that much usually because they're pre-made. But like most video games on Kickstarter, I think fall into the problem of being a little over ambitious and a little underestimating the time it's going to take to do these things. We were a lot over ambitious and a lot underestimated the time it would take to do this. So you know, like there's and a lot of it's just like a lot of it grew of like the scope we wanted to do for things.
Oh, that's
like,
I didn't know they.
We've come this far.
And I knew I had a feeling that they were a Kickstarter. I feel like I heard the last Epoch name around for Kickstarter for a while, but
let's keep pushing that. There's still things we had planned initially.
I didn't know like they
They
set like these crazy goals too,
Which I
right?
think being remote was a huge part of that because we were all already set up completely remote. Yeah, but Kickstarter was one of the most stressful things I've ever done. It was
And usually when
of,
like he's saying right now, like Kickstarter
like,
is
the
pretty.
first time we've really tried to market anything.
It's pretty insane place to develop a game.
To maintain through that.
There's some horror stories on Kickstarters and like Indiegogo and stuff. All those kind of
and so it was a little bit
like crowdfunding campaigns.
And then like as soon as you get over the line,
shit.
sort of this like cascade effect that happens where people are like,
They don't really work that well for video games.
Over the line, there was like a big burst that happened after that. I'm like, okay, that's great. And those
When you talk about how like Star Citizen,
yeah, it was
that game's not even out yet,
and yeah,
and how that game is like still raking money and how it started.
Pretty well, and now I think we can start probably talking about some of the 1.0 changes that are coming out with it. So I figure we kind of go through from the start of the game, mid of the game, into the game type of question. So is there, I've heard there are, and again, the patch notes just released, so I haven't had a chance to read all 85 billion pages of the patch notes yet. But I heard there's changes to the campaign or more added on. Can you go over any of the changes of the campaign?
There's not huge changes to the campaign, so there are still 3 chapters missing, from like the overarching main campaign story that we.
Oh, the street? What? Really?
And those will get added in future patches.
So I see.
Like a big, huge set piece in the campaign. If you've played through the campaign before, it's going to be broadly the same. There's a lot of little fixes and improvements and just a ton of things that smooth out the experience. That'll just help you get through the campaign a little bit easier than your first time, like just updates to the quest system and how that UI is laid out. Just little things here and there that is just going to make that campaign experience a lot better overall. And it's those polishing touches that I think have a really big impact on it because they take away a lot of those frustrations.
Yeah, I don't think
there's not a large amount of.
There's no way. Yeah, there's no way there's like a huge change in campaign.
I make my everything guys over at Icy Veins, and thanks to that collaboration, I was given the access and the possibility to playtest the closed test realm server for 1.0. I feel like the campaign is noticeably harder than it was in 0.9. And when I say noticeably, I mean it's noticeably harder.
Oh,
now I'm a big fan of that. I like having a challenge. I feel like feeling that my impact makes my decision making and how I interact has an impact on
that's what they said in the notes.
The we're in right now for the campaign specifically is exactly where you want it, or do you think it's still too much or too easy? What's your thoughts there?
Always room for adjustment on that. I'd like to see. I think if we're going to improve the campaign, difficulty scaling, that sort of thing, I think having more opportunities for players to sort of like choose your own difficulty a little bit more, where you can intentionally tackle harder tasks to maybe get through a little bit faster, or take a little bit different route through it to optimize that process a little bit. I think would be a positive.
Health, grit? No, I don't need that. Sell this. So.
But overall, I'm very happy with where the campaign is launching for difficulty.
I noticed that there's new mobs coming to the game. that they showcased in the video as well. Are we going to be seeing any of those new mobs within the campaign, or is this a monolith plus?
We almost always put them in both the campaign and the monolith. I think there's a couple examples of monolith only mobs, and there's a couple examples of campaign only mobs, but it's a very heavy crossover there, and a lot of that is just being able to reuse stuff that we're already using. Getting more life out of the assets we're making is a really big way that everyone wants to. It's making the game like you want to use everything as many times as possible without it becoming repetitive and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's gonna be in both.
Fair enough. Since we're on the topic of mobs, one of the questions that I got pretty commonly was mob density. People were wondering about. Now I don't know if this is something. Are you guys satisfied with how the density is in the game? Do you want to put more in there? What is your guys' situation when it comes to that question?
They are changing it, right?
Overall, we'd like it to be a little bit more dense than it is now. So it's not quite the full density we want to get it to. I think that we don't want to go. There is such a thing for us as too much mob density.
For sure.
And we definitely are cautious not to push it that far. So we are sort of adding these like little.
When you get
the last like 3 or 4 patches,
I would say like when you get up to the higher ones, the density does get really more packed, and it's not like widespread like in PoE. I mean, yeah, in PoE, like but it's more like in little packs around the echoes in the map.
And a big part of that is just making sure that the game is not crumbling.
But I could use a little more density for sure.
Well, it's unplayable.
Fair. Something that specific topic makes me wonder is something I wanted to ask you about later, but I can bring it up now. It's specific to the Warlock class with Chaos Bolt, actually, but there are other sources of this effect being in place, and that is life or mana gained on hitting a target. Now, the Warlock one is conditional, being cursed. That aside, the more density you have, the higher efficiency nodes like that has. We're also in a current state with a game to push the highest endgame or corruption levels.
Okay, I'm getting distracted by this podcast.
As a low life character, and modifiers that are giving you life gain on hit is currently that I know of. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please correct me. Are unavailable to prevent life gain on hits, whereas there are features to remove life gain, right, from the Lich tree, as an example. So with more density, that will further prevent that type of play style, which is already kind of hurt because of life gain on hit modifiers being unable to be negated, if you will. What's the thought process moving forward with things like that, with the current state of the game favoring that kind of playstyle for the 1% blaster players that want to push the high?
Melee strike?
I think there's I think there's room for like we don't want to push every build into one archetype, and having those having that life gain on hit associated with Chaos Bolts is probably just us pushing Chaos Bolts less towards the low life type of archetype with that node specifically. I know that there's I'd say there's room for more nodes to get added that may benefit both sides of things. But I think that the low life builds are probably more thematically appropriate on Lich than they are on Warlock specifically, which is probably why in this specific case we added life to it to help, I guess, promote a little bit more diversity in the which as you said, the low life builds are very prevalent in a lot of situations, and specifically on Lich, it's a major component of Lich. So I think we probably I don't remember this exact design decision, which is why I'm kind of saying probably and maybe like that.
Lich.
But my guess on the matter.
I call Leech.
Was
Lich. I mean, that sounds cool, actually.
Okay, your low life Lich is probably the more thematically appropriate way to go. Maybe you're focusing a little bit less on low life stuff. Maybe Warlock's more thematically appropriate way to go. And that's not necessarily a cold hard cut, but just there's maybe a little bit more push in those directions.
Fair.
As a follow-up to Ghazi's question, when you do, let's say you increased mob density, for instance, how much of the game, therefore, is affected on the development side of it? Because you have everything from experience gain to the performance issues you're talking about to the very specific build type of iterations that are changed, to what level you end up after the campaign, for instance, depending upon how you blast through. So does adding mob density into a game, I'm assuming it's much more complicated than just we want more monsters. It changes everything about balance?
Yes, yes, you hit on all the major points there. And yeah, it does affect all those things, and all those things get changed in concert together.
That's a good question, actually.
So we look at how fast are people, and we
It kind of makes sense though, but he answered the question.
Get through to the end of the campaign, and like we have projected models of how much we think it's going to be, and then we run actual practical tests and see how much it's going to be, and you know, like compare those differences and see how the changes we made actually affect things. That helps us make more informed decisions on how we're going to adjust those other things down the road as well. But yes, it affects all those things. It affects how many items you drop. It affects how much bonus stability you gain from the monolith on how many enemies you're killing just incidentally by, say, like running through with like a righteous fire type effect. Like if there's just more density, you're killing more enemies, you're getting more bonus stability. So does that change the rate you're working through like each monolith timeline? You know, like, so there's lots of little incidental things that are not obvious at first, but yes. So yeah, we do look at all those things as we are making adjustments like that, because they do impact each other.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Since we're on the topic, and then we can move on from the topic of performance, is something I'm noticing we're talking about here. One of the most common questions I get in performance related is loading screen times and how that's affected. I'm sure you're very familiar. This is, you know, something people will probably ask you all the time. So in 1.0, has there been any changing of loading screen time?
They addressed this in the patch notes.
Behind what could be affecting that?
Absolutely. So yeah, I can talk a little bit about why that is the way it is and what we're trying to do to fix it and all that sort of stuff. So the when you're in a multiplayer scenario and you are when you're online and you are playing on your own, you're a solo online character, and you go to a new zone. What happens is the server you're playing on deletes the zone you were in before, and then loads up the new zone.
Okay, let's go with this.
It brings in like all the objects and everything like that, sets it all up, and puts you at the start, and away you go. As soon as you're playing with another player, and you walk through that zone transition, it can't delete the zone that you're already in because that player is still in that zone. So in order to load the new one, it has
corruption.
to spin up a new server. So there's a whole nother server that starts up and starts running and loads up the new zone, and then you transition into that new zone. So when you're playing with multiple people, the zone transition time is significantly longer because you are waiting for that zone to load. You're waiting for that new scene the new server to actually boot up and go and run. And like we do a lot of things to prime servers so that they load up faster and so that they're prepared for when someone's going to need to use them. We're also doing a big part of the user experience flow that was a little less favorable leading up to 1.0 is the time between like clicking on a transition scene, seeing a reaction in what's going to happen, whether or not the learning process has started or not yet, telling you where you're going to be going, all these sorts of little things, the timings of these events. I'm kind of glossing over this, but the timings of when there's a little notification that pops up on the screen that says like you're entering this zone, and then there's actual like loading screen that shows up, and the timing of those events relative to when you click on the loading zone was causing people to feel like maybe what they've done isn't nothing's reacted to my act. Yeah, so we're working on those things. We're also working on
I felt that for sure.
It actually takes to spin up a new server and load new zones and all sorts of stuff. So like all those things are being looked at from many different angles, and there are tons of changes there that will have that will improve the overall experience in that process. I'm excited to see what they do with stability, and when I'm playing in a party,
I guess it is just stability.
Is that actually going to be? I don't know
with like servers and stuff like that.
That's going to be, because it's going to be different in so many situations with so many different computers. It is something that we are very hard working on and still improving. It's not a day and night, like it's not like we've gone it's 200% faster or anything like that. There hasn't been a huge change like that, but the overall experience of it does feel a lot better. It does feel a lot smoother. It does feel a lot more responsive.
So I'm assuming it'll be like the graphical changes where you know it started fresh and then it's going to improve over time is what I'm hearing here. It's a constant process.
Yeah, this is not something we're finished with.
I'm not a developer, but I mean, I don't know about you, but my tip would be that maybe you just make sure that you don't, now with Merchant Guild available with trading, that you don't load everyone's stashes when you load through. Wouldn't that speed up the process, or you already thought about that?
I don't think we bothered to implement that in the first place.
Oh. Oh, that's pretty impressive from an indie game, actually. Oh, sorry. Okay. No, I just had to check that. That's good. Faction system, however, to move forward.
I still think there was a good reason for that, by the way.
Faction system.
Hey, at least he can ask her.
Right off the rails, guys.
I mean, I've been just waiting for the moment to sneak that in. I just had to. Faction system, on the other hand, very interesting system. Already making, you know, pretty significant impacts outside of last Epoch, even as from what we've seen so far, which is very, very impressive.
Yep.
However, there's a consistent argument as to which one is better than the other. And the community seems pretty split, but also from what I've been hearing from developers at Last Epoch and 11th Hour Games on the topic. So I'd like to hear your words, what your thoughts are on the current power level between Merchant Guild and Circle of Fortune.
Yeah, so I think it's, I think that I'm very unqualified to answer like a predictive question accurately on which one's going to be best. I think that the ability to trade with people is incredibly powerful. I think just the ability to go to the bazaar and say, okay, my build is specifically missing one piece, and I have the money to buy that one piece. I can go get it right now. I know
The One Piece?
I can go get it. Like that alone is so powerful that like almost no matter what COF has to offer, it's like Merchants Guild is going to be able to compete with that, no problem, because it's just so strong.
I mean, yeah, you don't waste that much. You don't waste time either, or as much time.
And I think we've done a lot to put dials into the system to be able to adjust their relative power to each other. So we are going to be keeping an eye on that, definitely. I think that there's like, I really hope that the new player experience with like if someone shows up to, hey, I'm gonna play, which one do I pick? Do I pick Merchants Guild? Do I pick Circle of Fortune? I don't know, what do I do? And my dream for the answer of that question is, do you like trade or not? And that's it. It's just, you like trade? Okay, go Merchants Guild. You don't like trade? Go Circle of Fortune. And like I hope that's the community response to that. But you know, one of them may end up being significantly more powerful than the other. We've tried to do a lot with the community testers to balance them as much as possible. And I think they're in a really solid spot. But yeah, there's going to be imbalance there a little bit, no matter what.
Now, I wonder if these
On the topic of trading, I know
the guys,
from what I saw in the video, and my understanding,
these guys have early access to the PTO public test server. PTO, is it public test server?
So if that is
Yes.
PT, no, whatever.
Yes, mostly.
Like, I wonder if they got access to
by playing the game.
the faction system.
The price you're paying to the
I know the Merchants Guild can't be
that's not going
can't be activated.
Gold is going to the other place.
So then my question is about that in particular. So if you have to earn the favor in order to do the trading, what is the cadence by which you guys are developing it in order to do the trading? In other words, how often are you guys wanting the player to be able to interact with the merchant to get these upgrades?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's gonna shift. That's the primary dial we have to adjust to make things feel better, especially relative to each other as well. So both COF and MG require their own favor to interact with their own systems, and I think this is going to be something that we get a lot of feedback on of like, hey, I'm not able to go sell enough things because I'm not generating enough favor. We want people to have enough favor that they're able to sell all of the items that are like really the standout items that they're getting, but they don't want to use. So like the amount of items that they're naturally receiving, but they're like, okay, I don't have
Oh no,
a
that's
mage,
nice.
but I got this sweet mage weapon that I can go sell for a bunch of money. and all of the ones, all the items that are like stand out really great that you're finding. Hopefully you have enough favor to go and sell all those things and still be able to buy items. So I think it's less on specifically how frequently you're going to sell things, and more just relative to how many items you're finding as well. So you shouldn't be sitting with a backlog of items that you're like, well, when I get enough favor, I'll sell this type thing. You should be able to say like, okay, well, the items that are like that I'm getting that are really worth selling, relative to how strong your character is, you're able to
I mean,
go make those.
that kind of makes sense though, right? That's what